In case you missed the last video, I made a new desk. In fact, I redid most of the office for two big reasons. For one, I just needed a refresh. The office was a mess. I just kind of needed to start over in this space. But the second reason is because I've been trying to get myself back into writing and recording music. And for that purpose, the desk is awesome. The room still has a ways to go. It definitely looks better in here, but for audio, there's a couple of big problems. You see these big flat surfaces behind me in that empty corner? Those are bad. So today, we're gonna fix them. I've been playing music almost my entire life, so I know a little bit about music, but I don't know much about sound. Specifically, how sound interacts with a physical space. And I could either spend a whole lot of time trying to understand those things, or I could rely on people who have already done that work and use their experience to help me build something to make the room just better. So I've done a little bit of research, and basically I've come down to three things that can either work against you or for you when you're designing a space. The first one is reflection, and that's sound bouncing off of things. It bounces off of every single hard surface ever. That's what an echo is when a sound hits a surface and bounces back the way it came. The second one to think about is diffusion, and that's when you send a sound at a surface. If it's a flat surface, it'll bounce back. If it's a bunch of different surfaces, it will bounce in different directions, cutting down on the perceived echo. And the third thing is absorption. That's when you send sound at something that kind of grabs some of it and doesn't let as much of it reflect. And that's where we're gonna start, up in that corner. So the first thing we're gonna do is make a bass trap. And I had no idea what that was until I made my last desk in the corner, and there was a space kind of like this above it, and everybody kept yelling at me saying that I needed a bass trap. Well, apparently bass frequencies tend to kind of build up in corners. They bounce around a whole lot, and there's like an ambient bass in a room that's not true to the speakers that you're listening to them through. So you wanna put something in the corner to absorb that bass and stop it from building up. And that's what we're gonna do. Check that out. That's pretty cool, right? So this bass trap is not just about absorption. Otherwise it would be made completely out of foam. This one does have hard surface. So some sound is gonna go through these holes, hit the foam and get absorbed. Some of it's gonna hit this surface and bounce back into the room. But it's not gonna be hitting the walls like it normally would in a corner. It's gonna be bounced back into the room, and that helps. So they say. I don't really have any idea. Let's put some foam on this. So there's spray adhesive on here, which is kind of light tack, but it should be enough to hold this fabric in place while I get it really attached, probably with some staples. Now the black fabric doesn't actually do anything. It's just there so you don't see the foam, because the foam is ugly. This is leftover upholstery foam that I've had from different projects over the years, and none of it is big enough. But I'm gonna end up stacking up a whole bunch of it to try to make a pyramid-ish shape that I can shove up into the corner to absorb the sound. This thing is really lightweight, so I put some command strips on there, and they're the kind that have Velcro in them so that you can actually take them down in case I need to take this down. The Velcro pieces will stay on the wall, and then I can take it down and put it back. That's cool. That was actually pretty easy to do, and I think it looks really cool, but is it actually gonna help with the bass in this room? I have no idea. And I really don't know how you would tell, how you would be able to prove that it was better with that in place than without it. Maybe that's an advantage of understanding the physics and the math of sound. You could prove that it was better, but honestly, I don't know. Now, the other thing we're gonna do in here is actually gonna go right here, and it probably will be a lot more noticeable because I sit right here to do podcasts. On this wall, we're gonna make a giant diffuser. Now, a diffuser works against just straight reflection of sound. You have a wall here, you send some sound at it, it's gonna bounce back. And when you break up this flat surface and you make it into other things, then when that sound hits the wall, it's gonna bounce back in different ways, in different directions, at different times, and it's gonna change the way that that sounds. Now, I did spend a couple of days researching diffusers, trying to figure out, like what's the best material to use and what's the best geometry for the best result, and boy, what a rabbit hole. So I backed it up a little bit and just looked for the most common types. I found that the most common materials for diffusers are softwoods. So you don't want any hardwoods, because the harder it is, the more it's gonna reflect sound, but apparently softwoods are kind of a good in-between. So think pine or cedar, something like that. There's a couple of really common designs. One is a bunch of little cubes of that hardwood stacked up in almost like a, like a skyline kind of pattern. And then the tops of those are at different heights, and that helps diffuse the sound in different directions all over the place. And those look really cool. Another really common one is actually really simple. It's a slatted wall. They'll have vertical pieces of wood with a different size gap in between them, or maybe some have a thin piece of wood that sticks out in between every one. They're simple, they look nice, and I think that's what we're gonna do, but of course, it's me, so we're gonna make it unnecessarily complicated. So the plan is to have a really large frame right above my desk holding these 46 slats, and they're gonna have a little space in between. But instead of each one of those just being fixed in place, I thought it'd be kind of interesting if they could move and you could change the way the thing looked a little bit. So this is what the front of the diffuser is gonna look like when they're all pushed back. It's kind of boring. So we want to be able to change them, move them a little bit, and that's what these 3D printed pieces are for. One of these goes on the end of each piece, and it's got a little fin on it that's gonna fit into a slot. So each one of these slats can move forward and backward about 1.5 inches. Now I think it's gonna look pretty cool. I think we can make it cooler. Well, I make everything complicated and I'm about to do it again. What I want to do is carve on the top of the surface of all of these pieces as if it's one big sheet, but then it's gonna be in pieces that can move back and forth. But anyway, the way I've got it clamped down here is not gonna work, so I need to build a frame so I can keep all of those pieces in place so that I can power carve across all of them at the same time. Let's give it a shot. This video is sponsored by Notion, which is one of my all-time favorite digital tools. I've been using it for 7 or 8 years as a second brain to keep track of all the different parts of my life. Personally, I keep a lot of writings in it and notes. I keep tasks and to-do lists and Christmas lists and honey-do lists and all sorts of things in it. And then for work, I keep all of my project ideas and course information and how the videos are doing and just so much stuff. I need Notion at this point. On top of that, I collaborate with other people. It's a great way to share information and work on things together, whether you're planning a trip with some friends or you're working on a project with other people. And my favorite thing about Notion is that you can adapt every part of it to how you think and how you work and not the other way around. And that is why it's become the tool that I use for just about everything. On top of that, the absolute best thing about Notion is that you can use it for free. It's great. If you're not sure how to get started, they also have a Notion marketplace where they have thousands of pre-built templates to kind of kickstart organizing different parts of your life. And it's just really, really fantastic, and you should definitely go check it out. They've also got a brand new feature that I want to tell you about called Notion Faces. This is a cool little feature that will allow you to make a custom portrait out of over 1,000 different hand-drawn pieces by one of their illustrators, and it allows you to build your own little portrait that you can use as an avatar within the app when you're collaborating with other people. You have millions of combinations of these different features, and so you can make the avatar look exactly like you, or nothing like you. but it's a great way to be able to make yourself stand out when you're working with other people in Notion. Okay, new year, time to get organized. Here's what you have to do. Use the QR code on screen. Go get Notion for free. Start using it. Use the templates to help set it up the way that you need it to work. And then you use this URL to go create your custom portrait with Notion faces, and you can share it with other people. Huge thanks to Notion for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you for supporting our sponsors. When you support them, it supports what I'm doing directly, and I really, really appreciate it. Go check them out. Thanks, Notion. Getting all those pieces screwed onto both ends of each one of these pieces actually didn't take as long as I thought, which is really cool, but I haven't really explained what they're for. Each one of those pieces of plastic is gonna fit into a slot on one of these long pieces of MDF that I cut on the laser. And these are gonna go on the top or the bottom of a frame that we haven't made yet. So let's make it. Now this entire thing is gonna be kinda heavy. Not terribly heavy, but it is gonna be hanging on a concrete wall right above my desk, so I don't want it to fall. My plan is to keep it up there with a French cleat, which means I have to leave space for the cleat on the back of this panel when I put the frame on. Watch. I almost made a really big mistake, and I caught myself, luckily, in time to be able to fix it. But there's an opening in one side of those pieces, and not in the other side. And I put the opening at the bottom, which means all of those slats I made would not be able to drop in place. Luckily, the glue hadn't set up, I pulled all the pieces off, flipped them over, and we're good to go. But that could have been really bad. All of the pieces are cut, except for the cleat, still gotta do that. But I'm ready to put finish on this thing. Now I'm gonna try to match the desk that I made last week, and to do that, I actually used some super black India ink to dye the wood, and then you put a clear coat over top of it. You can still see the grain, but it's like black, looks super cool. I'm gonna do that on the outside, but the inside of this, you're really not gonna see. I just kinda want it to disappear, so I'm gonna save some money and just paint it. Now, one thing I do know about audio treatment is that no single thing you do makes a gigantic difference within a room. It's the accumulation of a bunch of different things, of adding absorbers, adding diffusers, adding bass traps. All of those things work together to make the room sound like you want it to sound. So I'm not entirely sure that adding this diffuser here is gonna make a gigantic difference immediately, but the only way we'll know is to test it. We're gonna do that with this microphone. Now this microphone is called a cardioid microphone, and that really describes the area around it that it takes in sound, kind of. That doesn't really matter, except to say that it's not an omnidirectional microphone, which means it takes in sound from every direction. That would be a lot more true to understanding how the entire room sounds. But this is all I got. So we're gonna use this one to see if the sound bouncing off that wall is gonna sound different once I've got the diffuser up. We're gonna do that recording through this microphone onto that computer, and then we can play them back. So now we're gonna do our before test. And the test is, you should go to shop.ILikeToMakeStuff.com and buy a set of plans, or maybe one of these awesome new t-shirts, or some of the other stuff that we have. Okay, let's put this thing on the wall, and then we can test it again. As far as hanging this thing on the wall, I failed to think all the way through that, and I forgot about this conduit that's right in the middle of the desk. So unfortunately, I can't just put a cleat on the wall and then hang something on that because this is in the way. So we're just gonna get around that by putting some 2x4s and then the cleats on top of those. So it'll look like this whole thing's floating off the wall about a ½ inch. Well, that turned out pretty cool. Now the LEDs on the inside, I don't know how much I'll use those, but they do kind of give like a waveform effect when you walk down and you get different amounts of light poking through. I just think it looks really cool. And that was honestly about half of why I did this, to have a really big, cool looking thing. Of course, the other half is audio treatment. So we need to run our test again to see if it made a difference. So I just listened back to the first test and I forgot to change the gain on this. So it's a little hot, a little distorted. I'm just not gonna change it. So they'll both sound kind of bad. You should go to shop.ILikeToMakeStuff.com and get a cool new t-shirt, or some digital plans, or a book, or some stickers. There's lots of stuff over there. Be sure to go check it out. Okay, I'm gonna listen to these in headphones and see if I can tell a difference. You should go to shop.ILikeToMakeStuff.com and buy a set of plans, or a book, or some stickers. There's lots of stuff over there. Be sure to go check it out. Okay, I listened to this in headphones and without headphones, and honestly, without headphones, I can hear a little bit more of a difference. I have no idea if it's gonna translate to you through the video, through your speakers, but with this thing in place, it sounds a little bit more live. I don't know, there's something a little more happening in especially the higher register and the lower register. The mids kind of sound the same, but I don't know if that's right or not. And I honestly don't know if I would have noticed it if I weren't looking for it. But either way, like I said before, this is one piece of many that could actually change the sound of the room overall. And regardless of whether it works or not, I do think it looks pretty cool. These things look really cool. I don't really know if they're gonna do what they're supposed to do, but I've still got a lot of other stuff I need to do in this room. Lots of flat surfaces that need to be improved. I'm gonna start on that, but I honestly don't really know what I'm doing. I'm sure a lot of you have experience treating rooms for sound and recording music and audio and stuff. And if you could do me a favor and leave some tips and tricks down in the comments, I would actually really appreciate that because I kinda need some help. Thanks for hanging out with me on this one. I appreciate it. Catch you on the next one. You can see behind me that there are two big flat surfaces for it. Wow. Okay. It looks better for sure, but but it is going to be hanging on a but I've got other flat surfaces that I still need to cover with something to absorb more sound.